can't hear very well anyway, so...
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's
okay,
good.
so it's good for you?
Yeah.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
He is the pinnacle of what I like to think of as like modern day interviewing entertainment, right? It used to be like 60 Minutes back in the 80s when I was a kid, right? You had these one-on-one interviews, hard-hitting, TV, NBC, whatevers. And now Joe's just like, I want to talk to that dude. So I'm going to call him and see if he wants to come talk to me. And if he does, we'll spend 3 hours talking about the most insane shit ever.
I think that that would be entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where does he live?
In Austin.
Oh.
Yeah, he left.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
He left California a couple years ago and came to
I
Austin.
didn't realize that.
He actually started... I love talking about Joe because he's my idol guy.
Yeah.
My other main crush aside from like John Mayer and Chris Stapleton, but that's a whole nother story.
Right. Okay.
So I've been following him since like news radio, back in the 80s or like I guess late 80s, early 90s was this phenomenally funny TV show that never really made traction, right? But he had a regular part on it for 5 seasons.
Well, what was that?
It was called News Radio. It was
News Radio. Okay.
Yeah, it was about a news radio station in New York City in the 1980s.
And 90s, it was a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the news radio guy?
No, he was the funny electrician guy, right? Because he was just jacked.
So he'd come in and like fix the stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his regular role was being involved with everybody, like conspiracy theories and like crazy makeshift electronics that are like trying to fix the office because the owner of the company was kind of a cheapskate, but like a wild-eyed, future visionary. So he saw in Joe's blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Funny, right? I remember watching that thinking, why is this not like globally famous? Then UFC hits. I'm like, oh, and he knows like jujitsu and shit. Get out of here! And it was immediate. It was like, all right, I'm gonna follow this dude's career forever. And now he moved from Colorado to L.A. L.A. was the pinnacle of like comedy clubs. Was a place called the Comedy Store in L.A. Right? Goes back Pauly Shore. Right, Pauly Shore, right, his mom,
Jersey guy.
Yeah,
yep.
His mom, Mitzi Shore, was the owner of the Comedy Store nightclub in L.A. that every famous comedian from like 1965 to 2005 came out of. Right, huge history. Obviously, COVID hits, everything kind of starts going haywire. L.A. turns into what L.A. and California is, and Joe moves down here to Austin, and just like 6 months ago,
it's
maybe.
It's like L.A., but in Texas.
Right. A little less asshole-ish, right?
Right.
And so he opened up his version of the Comedy Store in Austin. And now he's got, like, all these incredible comedians that are traveling from Nashville, from New York, from L.A., from these comedy hotspots, traditionally.
To come and interview.
To come and hang out and do comedy at his club.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super dope.
What's it called?
The Mothership.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super dope.
Have you been?
I have not been. I'm gonna make a trek out there. So this is gonna be a totally shameless plug, and I don't care because I believe if you put out in the universe what you want, it comes back to you. My goal is by the end of the year to have Joe Rogan's people calling me and say, "Hey, we want to talk to you. We want you on the podcast," and me to go like, "Done. I'm in." I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know how it's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna be the catalyst to set that off. But I'm putting that out there in the ether this year.
Well, Mike, I've always been just proud of you for one. Really, I don't even know if that's the right word, but just your inspirations, your dreams. You're one of those people that you have something and you have a dream and you want to follow it, and then you put it to work, and then you try to do all the things. And so you're singing, you're doing the band stuff, and it's awesome.
You're too kind.
Really though, I'm proud of you. I guess that's the right word. It really is, because you're doing all the things. So. And
that means a lot. That means a lot coming from you.
Yeah.
Because you inspire me in a way that we were texting back and forth. Oh, by the way, hi everybody.
Hi.
DadPod, ammo box, episode number, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. Just look at the description. You'll know which one it is. This is Melissa Alcott, one of my dearest friends on the planet. We met through my beautiful wife. You were actually her wing woman on our first date. So
yes.
That's how long I've known you. Which is
yes.
Fantastic. I love
that.
it.
That was at Buffalo, wasn't it?
That was at Buffalo Wild Wings.
I remember that. Upstairs bar.
Yep. And that's the day we met. And since obviously Katie and I got involved, I got to be a part of your life because she's a part of your life. And I've watched you I've watched you change over a decade. Obviously, people change over a decade.
Yes.
I've watched you grind it out as a single mom, and I mean grind it out and actually succeed and actually provide and feed your kid and put a roof over your head and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, it's a struggle. It's hard. It's not easy. But I have watched you grind it out and raise an amazing human being in Aubrey. All right, and your daughter, who's going to nationals for like dance, she's in cheerleading. She's like this remarkably successful kid, and all of the stuff that she's doing, and she's doing this. Now she's doing the lifeguard stuff and CPR. Like, oh, of course you're doing a good job. Of course, it's like obvious. Yeah. If she is the fruits of your labor, she is absolutely. She is 100% proof that you are doing the right thing as a mom. And that's why I wanted to sit down and talk to you on this podcast, because you inspire me to be a better dad, because I know what you've done with way less resources than I have. Aww. And you've done an amazing job.
Thank you.
Amazing job. And you've got a great husband now, and Joe, and another kiddo, and a little J-man who's like this big, but he's like 5, and I love him to death. He's a little snot. He's great. And I wanted people to hear your story. I wanted you to have a platform to tell people why it is that you desire to be good at the things that you're good at, right? And I pose this question to everybody on the podcast, right? It's the why, it's the what, and the how, right? And the philosophy comes from the original owner of Chick-fil-A, a guy named Kathy, right? His big philosophy was no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Okay. So the why is the most important thing of anything, in my humble philosophy, in my years of traversing life, good, bad, and indifferent, with different paths and different ways of looking at life and different, philosophies on theology and whatever. That one's always the one that stuck with me. The why in all that you do is the most important thing. After that, it's what it is you're doing and how it is that you're making what you do serve your passion, right? And I know that you are passionate about being a mom because you have proven it.
Yes.
You stood up every single day, woke up even when you didn't want to, even when it was hard, even when it was crazy and you were limited in all the things that you needed at that time. You still woke up and you went to work and you made sure that the kid got where she needed to go and got fed and all that kind of stuff, and woke up and did it again. And that amazes me, because there are times when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to breathe.
Well, you're a man.
Much less get out of the bed.
I mean,
there's some days when I'm just so over all of it, but it is what it is.
Right. Well, and I think that women have that instinct.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, when we have children, we take care of them.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it's been any kind of heroic thing.
Sure.
To me, I mean, maybe from the outside world, it seems that way.
Right. Which makes you even more awesome, just saying, humble brag, whatever.
Right. Well, it's just, I mean, Aubrey's awesome. I mean, just bringing Aubrey up because you brought her up, and, she's amazing. She's been a good kid. She's the opposite of me,
Right.
And I hope it stays that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was a good kid up until, I got to what age she's at now. So,
sure.
Let's hope things keep rolling the right way.
Most of us went south, right?
Yeah. 15, it's kind of like, I fell off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, being a mom is, I guess I never really even thought about my why. But, I mean, thinking about it now, I guess that is my why.
Right.
Of why I, try to keep a good job. And, I mean, I'm married now, and, we have a beautiful home, and
you've got side hustles. I mean, you are out there killing it. I mean, legit killing it all the time.
Right.
And I know that takes a certain amount of motivation. I know that takes a certain amount of just give me one more day. Give me one more day to just, get it up and grind it out, and I'll be okay. I know it takes that. And I'm fascinated by the way your mind works and making yourself do it. Because that's ultimately what it is, right? Is making yourself do it.
Yeah. I mean,
even on the bad days.
Motivation is definitely your children, your family. Mm-hmm. I mean, God, He tells you to, that's your people. Mm-hmm. And that's who you have to take care of. And that's who, I mean, I feel like I'm the queen of my home. Sure. And, I just, those are my people.
Yeah.
And then everybody else comes after that. I mean, you know, God, your family, and I'm talking about your people that live at your home.
Your core.
And then after that, you know, so I've just really tried to embrace that over these last, you know, 5 years since I've been married.
Right.
And, you know, marriage is huge, and a lot of people don't take it seriously. And, you know, I mean, there's just divorce everywhere. And, but, you know, there's going to be bad days.
Sure.
You know, sometimes a whole bad week.
Yeah.
Bad month, you know, but, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And what kind of perspective does like, again, being struggling as a single mom, what kind of perspective does that give you now? Okay, now I've got a partner. You know, I've got a husband. I've got the support system. We have a bad day. How do I handle that now? Because going at it alone is totally different. A totally different struggle. You know what I mean? And I have to assume that it would affect your perspective on dealing with it as a wife and a husband unit. Right?
Definitely. I mean, and you know, you say you're doing it alone, but I mean, Mike.
Figuratively, yeah.
You know, you and Katie for one. I mean, Katie first, and then you know you came along, but
yeah, she's got the biggest heart in the
y'all.
planet.
Your wife, Katie, has been. I mean, there were times where, I mean, I could have been sleeping on the streets, and, you know, Katie is like, no, you're not. You're coming to my house. But, you know, and she's known me since before Aubrey was born.
Right.
And so she's also seen me even before you saw me and my struggles with all the things. You know, the alcohol, the drugs, and, you know, everything.
The lifestyle,
yeah, the lifestyle. I mean, it's just, but I mean, I haven't done it alone. That is one thing that I feel is just really, you know, I do have family and I do have friends, and y'all have been my family.
Yeah,
throughout those times, definitely, and now and still are. But I mean, you know, my dad and stepmom, my mom, my sister, and you know, even though I may have been struggling, but those people also pushed me.
Sure.
To like, hey, no, you're not gonna give up. Hey, no, you're not gonna lay on the side of the road. Hey, you're not gonna fall off.
You're okay. Come home.
Sorry, exactly. And you know, if I needed a bed for a month,
come on.
I mean, I had the people, and you know, that was awesome. But I had the push.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't like they weren't gonna let me stay
free.
there. No, it wasn't free, and it wasn't forever.
Yeah.
You know, but it is nice to have that fallback, a family and close friends that are family, a support system, and I did have that, and you know, so that's kind of how I got by,
right?
You know, so it's really sad for the people that don't have that. I mean, you know, I've got a best friend right now, you know, that from high school, that. You know, she's just struggling. But you know what? I mean, it's like she's never going to get over that. She's never going to get over that hump because she doesn't have a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister or an aunt or an uncle who's going to be like, dude, what are you doing? Like pushing you. I've been that for her.
Well, that lifeline to reality, right?
Right, exactly.
It keeps you grounded. Okay, reality is you have to work to survive. It takes some effort. You know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah. And if you don't have that there, you know, pulling you along sometimes, I imagine that would, God bless her.
I know.
You know.
But, you know, I had that. Thank goodness. And I've seen friends even that had that, though, that fell off.
Side, right?
And, I mean, they didn't make it.
There's the other side, right?
So, I
won't mention anybody's name, but, you know, prevalent family in the central HEB area, you know, central greater DFW area. Who, you know,
I mean, smart people.
Yeah, incredibly smart. I met his dad, genius level dude, right? Love the guy.
Yes.
You know, and granted, I haven't spoken to him in a long time. That's fine. But when the last time we did, it was not looking good for him. And he had his own house.
Right.
He had a whole house that was just his.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As to set up a, and maybe I look at it differently, right? So I think
we're thinking of a different person. Oh.
Yeah.
Well.
Right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother.
Right.
I was thinking of.
Well, yeah.
But same group.
Two sides, same coin. Right. Two
right.
sides, same
group. I mean, and that was my people for a minute.
Yeah.
But you know what? I had people like you and Katie. I had people like my mom, my dad, my stepmom, my sister that were like even my my ex-in-laws, you know, I mean, Lori and Sean, I mean, they were like, no, 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 and just kept, you know, just bringing me back to reality. But really though, I mean, I got to, I say it's them, I say it's this, I say it's that, but I mean, I feel like, honestly, I mean, it was God.
Of course.
And,
right.
you know, because my heart changed when I finally made that, you know, decision right. To, you know, just put my faith into God and go to church and really, and it raised my kids that way.
Yeah.
Gosh, my son, he knows more than I do, I think. It really, you know.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference.
It's just awesome. I want that foundation for them. Yeah. You know, Aubrey, we didn't really start out that way when she was little. Sure. But, you know, I'm starting out that way with Jordan
and Aubrey's a good enough kid. She's receptive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's not, you know, she's not hell-bent in one way because of the environment she lived in. She's one of the most open-minded people I know. You know
right.
what I mean? Who grew up in struggle. You know, I mean, honestly, who grew up, you know, kind of grew up in struggle, you know? And she's just the most level-headed kid. He's just amazing, you know?
Right. I don't know what I did right.
You know? You know, well, is it a testament to that little piece of you that always knows, regardless of what I believe about what it is that the world says I should believe, I know, because I went through it. You know, early adolescence between like, you know, 14 and probably up to like 20, you know, 19, 20-ish. Heathen. Awful human being. A terrible human being.
Oh gosh.
And I admit it, and I'm not ashamed of it because it made me who I am. It made me appreciate the fact that the other side of that is way better. Right?
Exactly.
You know? And I think
sometimes the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah. And I think that serves as a function because even through all that, I still had at my core this little thing is like, okay, this can't be it. It can't be random happenstance, unexplainable.
Right.
I'll just leave it to the alien God. And that's my other thing, right? So
the alien God, huh?
I'm gonna stand up on my soapbox for just a second here. I know you'll probably go with me here. So there are two sides of the argument as to what started all life in the universe, right? One is obviously the biblical, the creator designer. Right?
Yes.
Everything happened for a reason. Boom, everything's great.
Yes.
The other side is, and I say this very literally. Was it Richard Dawkins, who's like this famous atheist? You know, I'm disproving God's existence guy that went around the world for like 25 years, trying to disprove it. His explanation as to how everything that led up to human life now happened was, well, aliens came and dropped some DNA in a pool. So in a little puddle of moist carbon-based whatever,
and made all these things.
And here's my struggle.
Come
with
on,
it, right? Here's my struggle with it. Let's take out whether or not I believe one or the other. It is far more appeasing to me to believe that God said, creative design, I'm going to leave a manual. Okay, follow the manual, you'll be fine. And then that proves out over, you know, millennia. And if you use it and you use it the way it's supposed to be used, yeah, you're a good person. You love your neighbor. Seek God first. You know, seek something other than the self, you know, with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. Whatever you call it is whatever you call it. You know, whatever makes you do right. You know, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Be nice, be kind, don't kill, don't cheat, don't lie, don't hurt, don't steal, right?
Yes.
Outside of that, the other option of that is aliens came down and said, I'm going to drop this and then see what happens.
I mean, come on.
We'll wait 4 billion years. It's fine.
You know, it just
really.
Well, and that's the thing. They can't prove anything. I mean, I've done a Bible study recently and apologetics, and we got into some philosophy and stuff. But I mean, there's just no proof of this. You can continue to, you know, have all the theories you want.
Right.
But, I mean, none have been proven.
Right.
And so, you know, God is bigger than proof.
Right.
And that's who God is. And that's what I believe.
Yeah.
And, you know, that has given me a better life.
Yeah.
That has given me a better heart.
Yeah.
That has given me a better path. And, you know, I just wish that people would just, the people that don't even want it, the atheists and all that, I wish that they would maybe just think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, go with a friend to church, listen to a sermon, just embrace it for just a couple weeks, because it changes your life.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. It's changed many of my friends' lives. And
I've been fortunate enough to watch the effects of what God can do in real time. And my buddy who was on the podcast a couple weeks ago, Brian, right? He and I started a company with another friend of ours back in the early 2000s called yourdigitalcanvas.com. It still runs today. It's still doing its thing. It's, I'm not a partner in it anymore because we had a falling out, blah, 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 yada, yada. Life is what life is. Brian's wife's brother, and I don't want to give a whole bunch of story background, but so Brian's wife Samara and her brother David were raised by their mother, who was a what do they call it, Baha'i faith, which is kind of like Christianity with no accountability, if you will.
okay.
Right. So the mentality and the lifestyle that comes along with that lack of accountability came to fruition in
They
David.
believed there was God, but there was no such thing as sin, kind of thing.
Right.
I don't know.
And David, her brother, was the embodiment of no accountability, right? But being okay, which he wasn't a jerk. He was a nice guy. He was a good person, but there was no inward reflection, right, of the outward action, right? Mm-hmm. So he was overweight and he was kind of lost, and I don't want to, and trying to find a way, but had no real avenues to go look for it, yada yada yada. So Brian says, move him out here. He'll live with us. We can put him in the business, which we did. We incorporated him in the business, got him into sales, and I watched this guy and it was that influence of God, because we as the individuals we were, Chris, myself, Brian, we were Christian men, right? And Brian's wife was a Christian woman. We went to church every Sunday. You know what I mean? We did Bible studies as part of our business routine. We sat down and actually evaluated. Okay, so what principles apply and cross reference each other, and we implement those things. And again, it's not because of anything we did, but because we chose to involve him in it. That company still exists today. You know what I mean? And it's doing fine. You know what I mean? Through no effort of my own, because I've been out since like 2008, right? So, but David came and started going to church with us, and started allowing the spirit that is the love your neighbor, that is seek God, seek knowledge, seek of the self, and love your neighbor, love your fellow man. I started to watch that, and then the self accountability came. Boom, right? I started losing weight. He went from like 200 and I'd say probably 220, 230 pounds at like 5'10", about my size, down to like 165. Jacked to the titties. I mean, cut. And I lived with,
good.
We
so,
lived together.
He started taking care of himself, and he knew that was the right thing to do.
And now he's got a beautiful wife, and they adopted a baby like literally months before Katie and I adopted Mad Cat. Right? And
awesome.
So that story kind of runs linear, right? I've watched it happen in real time and been awestruck.
Well, and that's the proof that people say they want to see. That's it.
Yeah. You just have to
it's
be
like,
willing to see
where's
it.
proof? Yeah, where's the proof of God? Well, that's the proof of God. And people don't understand that. They want to see a miracle right in front of their face. Well, a lot of times they are there, but you aren't open to see it.
Yeah. Well, we're programmed to see miracles in the way that TV sees miracles.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, this guy's dying. He actually dies and comes back from the dead. That's a miracle. Yeah, sure. That's a miracle. Yes, 100%. Jesus did it all, did it a couple times in the Bible, said, come back, you're fine. But also a miracle is and I'm glad you said this earlier, the new heart.
Right.
To watch somebody grow a new heart for life, for other people, for their kids, for their spouse, for their parents. To watch that happen in real time is one of the most, if you're willing to actually open up your eyes and watch it happen, it is the most awe-inspiring thing to watch. And I've watched it happen with you. I haven't been real close with you on your journey since I know around the time that you shifted that way. And
right.
But I have watched.
But you were there in the beginning when it started to happen.
And I watched the person you were turn into the person you are now. And it is, again, proof. 100% proof.
Yeah.
Right? 100%
Right.
proof. That's
right.
That's
Absolutely. I remember our talks on the porch. I don't know if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, it was probably after, like, crazy late night for me. But then, Aubrey's sitting at home with y'all. And I'm like, oh, here, I'm back home. And then Mike's
still a
like...
case of beer getting...
yeah. But, hey, I mean, we had our talks on the porch. And part of those talks were about God. Yeah. And a lot of them, most of them.
A lot of them were, yeah.
Probably all of them.
A whole bunch of them were philosophical, yeah.
But you know what? This is just popping in my head. But you know what actually brought me... surprisingly to God was music. I mean, speaking to a music man, I started, this was, I want to say like 8 years ago, maybe, I had a boss, a doctor boss, okay, because I used to be a dental assistant and the doctor I used to work for, he was very Christian, and so I started, and I knew that, and I started. This is like when my journey started, and it's crazy. I wish that he would know this today, because man, if that would probably make him so proud to hear that.
Send him an email with the link to this show.
Yeah, right? No, but yeah, Dr. Shave was his name. And anyways, this was a far drive for me. Yeah. This was almost an hour drive to work.
Oh wow.
And that's a lot. I mean, because I don't do driving to work. I'm like, if it's less than 30 minutes, it's not gonna work, So, but good thing you get to work from home, right? Right. But anyway, he was kind of the start, I felt like, of my faith, because for some reason, I just started listening to Christian music. And I was working with him at the time. And then I started having these questions. I was kind of going to church, but not really. But I confided in him with my questions. Sure. And I was like, hey, well, what does the Bible say about this? And what does the Bible say about that? And he had a Bible there in the office.
Right.
It was break time, and boom. I mean, he was ready to... I was like 25, 30 years old. I was like 25 years old when all this was going down. And I say 25, but I was probably like 27. But anyways, but he started that journey for me, and music started that journey for me. I started listening to KLTY every single day in my car. Yeah. And after about 3 months of that, I was like, I got to go to church. Yeah. I need Jesus. I need God. My heart is like craving that. Yeah.
Well, you see other people who are expressing that feeling. You're like, that actually exists. Somebody has emoted that feeling because they actually felt it, and it came out in this music. I have to seek that out. Of course you would. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's great. I love it.
So, yeah, music is great, Mike. And it just makes me think of you and your music, and... because it changes people. Yeah. Music changes people, but it definitely did for me. And then that's when I just, my faith just grew from there. Yeah. And,
He plants the seed.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
As long as you water it, it'll grow.
Yeah.
So. And it's funny because my journey was kind of similar. By the time I was 17, right. I was obviously as a choir kid, because that's who I am. I'm that nerd, right? And of all the choral pieces that I remember us doing, from junior high all the way up to even college, right? All those pieces that we did, probably hundreds of pieces. There are a handful that stand out, and every single one of them is a song about God.
All the ones that stand out?
All the ones that stand out.
Wow.
Right? There is the Hymn to the Creator of Light by a guy named, what's his name? John Rutgers, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, look up. It's easy to find. It's one of the most prolific calling to God pieces. I know they're out there hollering. It's one of the most prolific, well-organized calling to God songs, and it's like 3.5 minutes, real clean, right?
Yeah.
The other one is called "By the Waters of Babylon." It's actually my high school choir. Well, the high school choir program that I was part of did that song.
That's awesome.
Several years after I graduated, and they put it on YouTube, and it's super easy to find. If you ever want to hear one of the most haunting pieces of God's music, and it's about Babylon. It's about the Jews being enslaved and calling out to God. By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered thee, Zion. And it's this dark, cryptic, like super slow rise and fall. It's amazing.
Cool.
Right?
I want to hear that.
It's fantastic. You know, I bet you we can pull it up here.
Okay.
If you're okay with it, I love to.
No, yeah. I mean, sounds awesome.
Let's see if I can do this.
Yeah, music. I mean, Jordan, even my 5-year-old, he sings all the Christian songs now.
Right.
That's all. I mean, I do put on a little country, and of course, when my 15-year-old's in the car, I got to play some other hip hoppy things sometimes with her. But for the most part, I've got Crowder or
Steven Crowder.
Huh?
Steven Crowder?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah.
We're super friends now.
I mean, he is. He's one of my favorite.
He is fantastic.
Yeah. I've got the album is like right on my Spotify. I mean, I click that shuffle like all the time. And there's, Lauren Daigle, and I mean, there's other artists that really touch me and just get my day going.
Yeah.
There's so much good Christian music out there nowadays. Really, I mean, it's amazing. I love it. I'm so, and maybe it was always there, and I just never knew about it.
Well, like so growing up in the '90s, right? So there was Lifehouse, who was kind of a Christian band, but not a Christian band.
Yeah, right.
But they were super Christian band.
Oh,
right?
They just weren't really ready to like put it all out there.
Well, they I don't want to say they hid it. They just didn't wear it on their sleeves. They just put the music out as they put it out because it was a good music. They didn't necessarily want to label it as anything. And all of a sudden, boom, it took off on the rock charts. Right? And they were kind of forced to deal with it. But nonetheless, it was like one of those things like God's going to sneak through right quick. And with Lifehouse, with like the first Creed album was a crazy, super dark Christian
I've got some
album.
of them on my playlist.
Right,
yeah.
right. Jars of Clay were a phenomenal band.
Yes.
That were heavily Christian, like marketed, but they were phenomenal.
Those aren't still around, really.
Not really.
Yeah, I know.
You know
it's like, wow, is this classic or
what?
what?
But you think about a time when we needed it most. Right,
yeah.
Late '90s and the early 2000s, the Clinton era, and all the kinds of crazy stuff with the Monica Lewinsky's, and like we were talking about the pervasiveness of societal norms being changed to something totally different than it was. You know what I mean?
Right. We're still dealing with that.
Of course, right. But there was some really interesting Christian music that's really influenced the way Christian music is now. You know what I mean? As far as like, because I'll be the first one to admit, I'm not real big on like the super worshipy music at the first part of church where it's kind of poppy, rocky, and I get it. I totally understand the necessity for it, and I appreciate the fact that they do it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some of them are great, like "Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord" is still one of my all-time, and it's the most simple. Open the eyes of my heart, it's the most simple song. It calls to me for sure. But even like was it Switchfoot, right? Who is a huge rock chart sensation for a few years. They were a straight up Christian band. They had some really, really big hits across like 3 albums during the godless cesspool that was the period after the 80s, right?
Right.
So there's some really interesting stuff that went on. Anyway, onto the
okay, yeah.
So this was
Trinity Choir alumni, both of us right here.
Yeah, you know. So this is one of the most influential songs in my entire life. When I heard when we first ran through, because obviously your choir director gives you a piece of music, you sight read it, kind of get a feel for it, and see what's up, and they play along with you, kind of let you feel. The first chord that actually comes in, and it's a little while. It's a long ass song, but the first chord that comes in with all the voices, I was like, oh, something just sparked. Something just lit on fire inside of my soul. I don't know what it is, but by the time we get to the end of this, I have a feeling I'm going to figure it out. And sure enough, this is still one of the most influential pieces in my entire life. As a 45-year-old man who studied blues, bluegrass, gospel, classical, this is my jam. And it's like 8 minutes, but I won't make you listen to the whole thing. But
sung this?
Oh yeah, we did this
stage?
when I was in Trinity.
I mean like on your stage now.
Oh no, this is totally not a pop song at all. This would not ever go over on a stage unless you're actually part of a choir. You'll see why. You'll see why. We got to fast forward the ads because YouTube is garbage. It's probably going to destroy our algorithm, but It's in the middle of it. Sorry. Let's start with the beginning. It's like 8 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's a composition. It's a choral composition, but it's astonishing. It starts with the whispers. Straight Joe Rogan style. Jamie, put that song on.
Oh, is that the thing?
By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept, when we remembered thee, O Zion.
Right?
Wow.
Creepy. All acapella, no instrumentation, 8 minutes of this. That rises and falls.
No instrument the entire time?
Yeah. Watch. It gets way better.
What if they still do this?
Oh yeah, this was done in 2011. This was 15 years, almost 15 years after I graduated. Here we go.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's 8 minutes of that, right? That is the song that is probably the most influential in my life as a musician. And you know what kind of music I do. I do straight outlaw country, blues, rock, southern, like attitude. I don't give a shit. Whatever you want to say, I can kiss my ass, but I'm country, and that's what it is, right?
I think that's one of the best kinds of music. But
Right?
Yeah.
And the core of my influence comes from this noise, right? Comes from this
Yes.
kind of distortion, this little bit of dissonance, because that resolution after the dissonance, is what makes music great. And I got to study it with some amazing people, it's and being that, and again, that change of heart thing, right? That change of heart when you actually, and for me, personally, I had. So I moved to Austin in 2007, and I was legitimately about 4 years into my legitimate dive into Christianity and being a good person and being a better man and wanting to be a father and a husband at the time, right? 27 to maybe 29. I'm in Austin. I'm single. I'm more or less celibate. Anyway,
Well,
at least trying to control myself and not being the horrible human being I was in my early 20s. And that experience of how do I explain it? Being that far into my journey, I still had a lot of questions, even at 4 or 5 years at that point. And God put in my life a little book called Secrets of the Vine. Max Lucado, maybe? Might not be him. Anyway, it's some
in that time.
Yeah, it's a famous Christian writer. It's a little small book, little pamphlet style book, and it's basically the lesson of God taking out of your life the things that you no longer need, not because you determine that you don't need them, but because He determined that you don't need them, and then dealing with the fact that He's taking things from you that you don't necessarily think that you want to let go of because it's time for Him to take them from you, right? And at that point, there were a lot of my friends in my life who were going in a very different direction, who I had known for 10, 15, 12 years at a time.
Couldn't imagine your life without them.
Right. Who are my ride or die dudes? Take a baseball bat to somebody's skull for you if you need it. Kind of dudes, you know what I mean? And that was the time I really started to see, okay, if I want to go this direction, I'm going to have to start letting God do this. I'm going to have to start letting Him remove those pieces, right? And that's when a lot of things really came into fruition. And the baseline across all of it was, you don't have control. Mike, you don't have control. There's nothing on this planet, there's nothing in this life that you have any control over other than how you react to what happens outside of your brain. That's it. That's what makes you a good person. That's it. That's right? It's the simplest thing. So if you react to a shitty situation with a shitty attitude, people are going to look at you like a shitty person. If you can react to a shitty situation in a positive way and find a way to grow from it, to learn from it, to edify other people with it, which is that new heart thing.
Right? Exactly.
I want to go through this, and I want to experience this, even though it may suck at the time, because I want to be able to explain to somebody else, hey, this stuff is going to happen, but because of the things, because I believe what I say I believe, I'm fine.
Right.
Everything's fine.
Right. I mean,
know?
and that's the thing, and that's what the Holy Spirit has done for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're in your early 20s, you know, you're just so concerned about what other people are thinking about you. I mean, obviously, even in your teen years, I mean, that's like number one, you know, but I mean, that continues on until, I mean, that can get, I know 6-year-olds who feel that way, you know, so, I mean, that's something that God has brought into my life is, hey, you know what, you don't have to fear anything. Yeah. You don't have to worry about what this person's thinking of you or what that person's thinking of you. And as long as you and I are good, then all is good.
If he is for me, who can be against me?
Absolutely.
Bet.
I mean, bet. Really?
You know?
I mean, Mel, yes, absolutely.
And you watch it happen. You watch it happen in real time.
Yes.
It's the most amazing thing.
You know, because people can go over here and whisper behind my back, and guess what? I don't care. Yep. You know, I don't care, and
my bills still get paid.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And my
kids
family's
still fed.
good. You know. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what? So I mean, that's something the Holy Spirit does for you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people that are just so intertwined in society and what people think about you. I mean, it's so freeing to not feel that. That's free. That's freedom.
That's freedom.
That's absolutely freedom. Yeah. Having, and that's what God's given me.
Right.
You know, and that's what God has given everybody who puts their faith and trust in Him.
Yeah.
I mean, He gives you freedom. Yeah. And I just wish that, you know, more people would turn to that and realize that. And, you know, sometimes, but, you know, as a Christian, you know that sometimes it's just like you're afraid to go out there and say it.
You self-censor for sure.
You know, because we're, you know, the media.
Because the TV.
Absolutely. I mean, we're looked down upon almost being Christian. I mean, we're such a bad rap, you know?
We're simpletons who can't understand science.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Even though science and God go hand in hand, but that's a whole nother.
Come from somewhere. Just
right.
saying.
You know, gosh, I'm trying to think. What was it? God. What did my daughter say? I was trying to talk to her the other day about some stuff that I had learned in my apologetics class, and God creates, scientists discover. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool coming from her because, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like scientists, you know, they try to keep coming up with, well, how did this happen? How did this happen? Well, God created it. Yeah. You're just here to discover it. Yeah. You know, you're a scientist.
You're just here to tell us how it works, not explain how it all started.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't, we have the explanation. Quit trying to go around it. Yeah. So,
I've heard some really interesting stories about like NASA scientists who worked on like mapping out the universe as we can see it from Earth, right?
Right.
Sending out the telescopes and plotting everything, and by and large, the majority of them who actually take it seriously and who actually understand the wonder of what it is that they're investigating, as a human being incapable of creating it, all of them are driven to God. All of them are driven to God as the explanation, right? And the ones who aren't, I'm going to call Neil deGrasse Tyson out on the carpet for this because it's BS. Neil deGrasse Tyson's explanation of the reason things are the way they are is literally what translates from his nerd speak science to English in it is what it is, right? And he's explaining like the mathematical planes that meet on perfect arcs versus on planes that move in circles away from each other, blah, 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 blah. And there's a definitive point at which everything kind of doesn't gain singularity, but from like almost like a definitive zero, so to speak. And his explanation of that point is, well, it is what it is.
Okay.
That doesn't make me feel good about anything that you've spent.
Right. So it's like, what's your purpose?
Millions.
Why am I here? What's your purpose? What, you know?
How many grants have you had? How much time have you spent? How many resources have you spent of your own to come up with the philosophy of everything coming down to, well, it is what it is. Okay,
Sounds like
a
12-year-old.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Right? I refuse to accept what I think it should be because it's the only logical thing it can be, and I'll just say it is what it is.
Well, the supernatural is just, scientists don't like that.
Yeah.
They want to come up with, explanation for everything, but there doesn't always have to be an explanation for everything. An explanation can be God, and it's okay for that to be the explanation.
100%.
So
it's okay to say, I don't know.
And guess what? It's a lot more peaceful when you're okay to say that and feel that and know that. I mean, for these people that are trying to run around, God.
The endless search for the beginning.
How miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that would just be a miserable life, but
And I look at it like this, right? It's like it's that endless pursuit of the beginning to avoid the end, right? They're just running. They're running at the beginning to run away from the end. Right. Yeah. Because the ultimate end is what? Is death, right? And whatever happens after that is however you explain it. Is however you explain it. Whether any of us know what really happens is irrelevant. What I know to be about what happens with the energy that is me after I'm gone from here, I know it's bigger than me. I know it's bigger.
Absolutely.
Than me, right? And I don't have to run from the end. I don't have to run from the end. Okay, when the end comes. God, I'm coming,
fear.
baby.
that fear goes away.
Yeah, mira, I'm coming. I'm on my way. Let's go. You know?
And that's when, it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's when you can say that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when, it's like, but that's God's plan.
Right.
But yeah, I feel
I say
what
that,
you're saying.
I say that because I don't know what God's thing is. It is what it is because he said it is what it is. It's not it is what it is because I spent 45, 50 years calculating mathematical equations to prove that an absolute zero exists between two ethereal or non-existent planes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I read the Bible. It is what it is.
You're still on this guy.
It is.
Who's this, Neil? Something or other?
Neil, he's actually a world famous scientist. I'm probably going to catch a lot of backlash for this, but whatever.
Well, I'm sure a lot of Christians probably feel that way that know who he is, and he's not the only one. No. There's a lot of them out there. So
they're the ones who get notoriety. You know what I mean? And I'll be the first to admit, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a great marketer. He is wonderful at giving speeches and making people feel like comfortable and being relatable to people. And he's genius. I'm not going to say he's not smart because he is. He is an absolute world class genius level like physicist.
Well, and that's why his brain just continues to think and think and think.
He's got an engineer brain.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine.
He's never going to give up. It's like he wants that.
Yeah.
So,
but
I understand that though.
But that peace that comes from not having to run towards the beginning anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is where I truly began to understand why it's important to understand that humanity is not the end all be all of the existence of the entire universe as we know it.
Right. Look at everything around us. Well, and in Genesis it says that God created the universe as a sign. As a sign of how powerful he is.
Yeah.
Come on.
Watch this. Wow.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And that's, I actually that just clicked with me in the recent years.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that makes sense to me, as a believer.
Yeah.
But, that may not necessarily make sense to scientists because that just doesn't cut it for them.
Yeah.
But,
and how much of that science is predicated on the predisposition that it doesn't exist, right? That it doesn't exist, so I have to figure out what happened. Well, if you operate under the premise that it does exist, it makes getting to that wall that every scientist gets to. Look, I've done it because music is a science, right? The language of music is a science built on patterns and cyclical vibrations and all kinds of stuff, right?
Right.
Organizing that stuff is a science.
Yeah, you can put science to anything.
Right. And I've gotten writer's block. I've gotten to the wall and been like, oh, where do I go from here, right? But instead of approaching it from an engineer's brain, okay, now I got to go figure out how to manipulate the scales that I've been manipulating in a different way. It's like, okay, it's fine. Take a breath. It's this way because it's supposed to be this way.
Right.
Not because you get to figure it out. And maybe I'm weird, but I go back to Jefferson, right? Jefferson said, "Question with boldness, even the existence of God." And Jefferson was a devout deist, a devout Christian, right? And he wrote his own version of the Bible, and there's a lot of people saying, well, he was a deist, he wasn't a Christian, and that's not really what he believed. He wrote it because he wanted to take out the dogma, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I get it. But the reason he wrote that his version of a Bible without the dogmatic is because he was questioning with boldness even the existence of God. And because he believed what he said he believed, he was able to actually pursue the inclusion of the elimination, or at least the space in the Constitution for the elimination of slavery. It was written that way for slavery to be abolished at some point. It was specifically designed because Jefferson, Washington, those guys understood, look, a free country cannot be free if you have some people in captivity. You can't. You just can't do it, right?
Right.
So it was written the way it was written to eventually exclude slavery as a proposition for American society. It took us 100 years to get there.
But we got there. But God, I mean, a year is half a second to him. So.
And if we aren't made aware of what bad is, then we don't know what good is. Right.
Well, and that's why there is bad in the world. I mean,
right.
God does control everything in my eyes and my heart. Yeah. But I mean, there's things that go on that it's to lead you to faith.
Yeah.
That's what I've always felt. Sometimes you get put in a position in your life when some people think that, oh, what about things happen? But I feel like it's to bring you closer to Him. And it took me a long time to know that and to learn that. And I feel like nothing really tragic, crazy has really happened to me.
Right.
I mean, and I hate to even say that right now.
Right. Right.
But but maybe it has, and I just haven't ever really taken it so hard.
Right.
But I feel like if you believe that God has a plan, and then that allows you to live your life. Yeah. I mean, of course, you want to be careful. You want to protect your children and do all the things. You're still going to do those things. I mean, you're not just going to be like, okay, hey, just, all right, my 5-year-old, just, go run out in the street. I mean, you're not going to be that way.
Right.
You're still going to be a protective mother or father or whatever. But, but you're just not so fearful anymore. I mean, I pray. I mean, Jordan, like, he can't sleep good anymore unless we pray together, and it's awesome. I'm telling you, he had such a hard time sleeping, but, I try to go in there in his room every night now because he's like, Mom, we need to pray. Yeah. And it just, I mean, Joe and I, we're just so, just proud that that's in his heart now, that he wants that. And, we've,
it's nature. It's a natural part of humanity, to cry out, to ask why, to ask, to give thanks for the things that you have that you can't explain why you have them, right?
Yes.
So, and I started day one with her, right? We started day one with the Constitution, the Bible, and the Lord's Prayer. We are raising this baby on the American foundation. End of story,
Yeah.
And now, and 4 years later, she says the prayers with me at night. She says, "Are we going to say our prayers at dinner time?" And she's actually the one reaching out, to grab hands. But
Good job, Mike.
But isn't that so indicative of the natural inclination that people have to be understanding of the fact that where our physical existence in this spot is not where it ends? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
You have to put stuff out there if you want stuff to come back. And whatever you put out there will 100% come back.
Not even 100%, 1,000% sometimes.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I see it all the time. I mean, it's like, people that are struggling with their bills, people that are, struggling with how am I going to make rent next month. But, somehow, I mean, for the believers, they know that it somehow it happens. Yeah. And you get by and you make it work. And if you're following Him, you're following Jesus, it works out some one way or another. I mean, it just does. Yeah. And when you give, you get back.
Yeah. And that's
easy.
That's where the mindset has to shift, right? Mm-hmm. Go from a mindset of self-service to outward service.
Exactly.
That's where people's lives change. When they start wanting to do good things for other people, not because it feels good to do good things for other people, but because God is saying, "Hey, I need you to do this right now. Get after it."
Well, and then it just becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
Because that's what the Holy Spirit is. It literally changes your heart, and it makes you want to be that person.
Yeah.
You are that person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Jesus comes and changes
you
your
are
heart.
that person. Yeah. Like
you are not the same person you were, and that means, and there's a lot of people say, "Oh, that sounds super wishy-washy," and it can sound that way to somebody. And look, I'm not a theologian. You know what I mean? I haven't necessarily gone out and studied this. I've studied more about American political science than I have about Christianity, 100%, because I'm that nerd and I wanted to know about it, right? Mm-hmm. But I still make an effort to delve into the Word and read and listen and extrapolate what I can. I don't have it all memorized, but when I can recognize when something comes up when I'm reading it, it's like, all right, I got you. My bad.
Exactly.
And that's the point. That change in heart is where I think a lot of people are afraid. I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, because when you and I'll be the first person to attest to it. When you serve the self serving the self becomes very, very lonely. Yeah. Very, very lonely. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not doing anything for anybody else, they're not doing anything for you either. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Right.
Right.
And by the time I got and that was part of my move to Austin was that okay, I need some time with myself.
So was that when your life kind of you started like looking at God, towards God, and going that route when you were like 27? Yeah. You said
that's when it culminated, right? So for 4 years we tried to run a business and we pulled resources and did some amazing work, but at the end of the day it just 2008 happened and we bought a restaurant, and then the economic collapse happened and we sold the restaurant, and after that it was like, okay, I'm done. I got to move on, right? Mm-hmm. So it was 2007, 2008, 2009, and that is when God and I had a very unique conversation. I don't know if I've told you this story before. I told it a couple of times probably on this podcast. So if you're tired of hearing it, I don't care. I'm gonna tell it again. It's my show, whatever. I remember sitting in front of my computer, right, contemplating life. I was in online classes at Capella University or University of Phoenix, whichever one at the time. Mm-hmm. I had my little Netflix subscription. I had a little 700 square foot apartment in Austin. Slinging drinks and bartending, playing music. I had a little band together back in the day. That was rehearsing a lot, at least. We did a couple shows.
Right.
And I remember sitting there, like, man, what is this? What is this all? What am I doing? Why is all this? Why is none of the stuff that I want to working out? And why is all the stuff that I don't know why it's happening, right? And it was a very surreal moment. And I know it wasn't like something that triggered it outside of my brain that had this conversation. It's God talking to you. He said, "You're going to be a dad." And I was like, "Shut up. No, I'm not. What are you talking about? I'm 27. I have no education. I have nothing going on here. I literally have a car note as my only asset, which is a huge liability at like $20,000, right? I could literally I'm negative in the hole with credit card bills. I have
like, there's no
less
way.
than nothing, right? It's like, not now, dummy. You're going to be a dad. It's like, what are you talking about? So over the next couple of days, like, you go through life and you're like, and it just kind of keeps talking to you and scratching at you. Like, what's going on? It's like, okay, so lay the plan out. Said, and here's the gist of the conversation. You're going to be a dad. It's going to be a daughter. She's going to be adopted. And that's it.
So these were the things that you were getting.
At 27, 28 years old. These are the things I knew about my life at 27, 28 years old that I knew beyond anything else. Wow. Whether or not I was going to be a famous musician, whether or not I was going to be successful as a project manager.
Where's the science on that, right?
Right? Right? These are the conversations that I was having, because it was just me. It was me and my cat. I didn't have a girlfriend, and my buddy was out.
So was your cat telling you? Yeah.
She was too stoned most of the time.
But anyway. It's really cool, Mike, that that happened. And these are the things that we're talking about. This is the proof. These are the proofs. It's you can't say, oh yeah, look at this, shiny figure over here. This is Jesus. I mean, it's things like that
That's
happen.
That's why we're told not to worship idols. It's not about the shiny thing. You know what I mean? It's about watch.
That's crazy.
Just watch.
I didn't know that.
I waited 13 years from that moment, from that conversation to the time we got her. I'm a dad to a daughter who's adopted. 13 years later. Katie and I didn't know each other back then. Katie and I had no idea who each other were back then. You know, I guess it's now almost 20 years or 15 years, 17 years.
Well, I remember Katie thinking about adopting before you even came along. I'm sure that y'all probably had the conversation. I hope.
Yeah. That was part of the plan from the beginning.
Right. Well, that was something that I remember her before you came. That she was ready to do it on her own. Mm-hmm. You know, she was looking at the physical features and all that. Yeah. You know, and so y'all are great parents, and
thank you.
Y'all deserve it. And Katie, I mean, being my sister, my best friend, everything. I mean, she has been there through so many hard times in my life, and she deserves it so much. She's such a wonderful mom, and I know she's a great wife, and I'm just so happy for y'all, because that is just such a gift from God.
If that ain't God working in your life, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean?
I mean, come on, all children are. So.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna let's take a little break. I gotta pee
okay.
so bad.
Yeah.
I had five beers already. Yes, Christians can drink. It's fine.
They've been spread out.
You know what I mean? If Jesus turned water into wine, I'm drinking beer. Let's take a quick break.
We have our rules, and we both want to stick to the same rules.
Everybody understands where you're coming
from. Yes,
I
mean,
none of the BS.
Well, because he's got baseball going for him. He's, Aubrey's got dance going for her, and I mean, they have things going on.
Pursue,
you can't screw it up.
What's the old adage? The idle hands are the devil's playground, right? So keep them busy; they won't less likely to do stupid stuff.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, that's when I went kind of downhill.
Yeah.
You quit having a purpose, and then things go bad because it's like you have no purpose.
You don't have anything to strive for, right? High school was. I remember high school being like one of those things where. I mean, we were awful. So I was one of 7 tenors in a 70-person choir, right? So for the other 70 voices that were not tenors, there were 7 of us to balance that entire, and that's 2 parts. That's tenor 1 and tenor 2. There's 7 of us to cover 2 parts across 70 people.
Oh, wow.
So we had a lot of...
That's like mid-range, right? Or what?
High male range.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
The top end of the male range.
Okay.
And we were, I was a second tenor, which is like the bottom of that top end range.
Okay.
And so we, because we were, smart kids who understood, concepts in life, we were like, well, there's only 7 of us against 70 of them, so she needs us like real bad. She needs us in this choir real bad. Real bad. And
important.
Yeah. And we took some license with that. We were the kids who showed up to choir, because choir was 4th period, right? Mixed choir, varsity choir was 4th period.
So that's like midday.
That was midday, right? So you either had A lunch, B lunch, or C lunch, depending on the trimester. So you either went to choir and then went to lunch, or you went to lunch and then went to choir, because they never split up the choir stuff. Most of the time we were go to lunch and come back to go to choir. Now we would go to Burger Box down on 157 in Harwood, because they had a smoking section.
Oh.
Yeah, back in the day. Indoor.
Wow.
They still had the old little, like, this thin little metal ashtrays, straight out of the 80s, right?
Oh, okay.
It was either that or Long John Silver's, because our buddy worked at Long John Silver's.
Over off Maine or whatever.
Yeah, Maine and 183. Right?
I don't even think that's there anymore.
No, I'm pretty sure it's long gone. But they had a smoking section too, so that's where we go. Now we were
Crazy.
So we were the 7 singing tenors in a 70-person choir. We smoked
Smokers.
habitually. We came into choir late. Every opportunity we got, we took all the license we could take and all the leeway we could take, just short of getting kicked out of choir. Just short, you know. And we knew she was. I mean, she wasn't gonna. You can't balance 70 with 6. You gotta do it with 7. Because and the crazy thing is, like, the tenor section, myself excluded. I'll totally take myself out of that section for this little anecdote. But our tenor section was 6 other dudes that could sing. That tenor section was the strongest section in that choir for sure. Maybe short of like the First Sopranos with Jill Hall and a couple other girls who were just phenomenal, and maybe the second altos. But the tenor group was primo, and we knew it. We acted. We were awful people, awful human beings, and she worked miracles with us. She worked miracles with our. I mean, we took first. We traveled nationally, first place across the board. You know, all the local stuff, all the UIL stuff, all the blah blah blah. First. Unbelievable, and for a bunch of hacks.
Is Trinity still doing good in choir? I don't know if you know or even like keep up with that or not. But.
Well, last I saw Mike Dean was still choir director, who took over after Cherry, which was 2001, I think, 2002 maybe, when she finally retired. And he kept the tradition going. Those kids are still smashing it. Harmony's Encore, I still get the emails every year. Hey, Harmony's Encore, come here.
Do y'all do the reunions and all that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you had one not that long ago, I want to say, right?
We've had 3s in the last 5 years, right?
Wow.
And that's the testament to
awesome.
What a good teacher is, right?
Yes.
So all of us kids that were awful people in high school, in our 30s, late 30s, early 40s, all organized this big thing to honor her for being an influence in our lives. And it was this big, great, awesome thing at Trophy Club Golf Club. Blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
You know, but
cool.
that's who she was to us, and I understand that
that's
now.
Fancy.
Yeah. As an adult, I'm like, oh, thank you, Cherry. Thank you so much for what you did to me. Whereas as a teenager, like, she ain't getting rid of me. I'm awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where, but having, being back to the original point, idle hands in the devil's playground, whatever. We didn't get into much trouble outside of school because that's all we did. You know what I mean? Men's choir, varsity mixed choir, show choir.
Right.
And that was all day. It was all day. You know what I mean? I remember taking like 3 academic classes between my junior and senior. I took nothing.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, I don't know if it's still that way, but yeah, I mean, I remember it was like senior year. I'm like, I only have 4 classes. What am I going to do with my life? And but yeah, I mean, I had actually, so the principal who's retiring this year from Trinity, but he was a kind of one of the like a principal. You know how at Trinity they have the principals per grade. Yeah. So he was one of those.
Gotcha.
And I just remember being able. He was cool. I mean, that's the best way to describe him, because when you're a teenager, you need somebody cool to talk to.
Yeah.
And
especially in a big ass school like that.
Yeah.
With 1,700 kids. I mean, that's,
I mean, and that school's overrun by the football players and, the big guys and all that. And exactly. And so, but I had a principal that was he was a good influence, because you need people that feel like they're listening to you when you're in your teen years, and he was that for me. And but he's retiring this year. They have a new principal coming in next year. Oh, so
I tell you what. So, I mean, obviously Matt gets 4, so I got a long way to go before she gets into high school and dealing with all the teenage years and stuff. But I am petrified of what we're going to send her into, because Katie and I are having a
I can't even imagine. 10 years from now, I can't imagine. I
mean, I was a horrible person with the first generation of internet technology that came as far as smart tools go, like iPhones and tablets and stuff. I was in my 20s when that stuff happened. I did not use it for good purposes. I did not use it for good. You know what I mean? I used it for what the internet is most commonly used for, which is gross, weird shit.
Yeah, right.
So it terrifies me to think that in, 12 years when she's 16 and she's about ready to drive and she's got high school friends and all this stuff, it terrifies me to think that to think about the access that she's going to have to the world, literally the planet, right? So you can I've got a S8 tablet, right? Samsung S8 tablet, basically a computer, right? Just really small.
Well, yeah, they're all computers now.
You can access anything on the planet with it, and I don't even let her little like Amazon baby tablet thingy does not. I turn the Wi-Fi off. No, no, you are not going to be on anything beyond what's in this actual machine.
You can play
right
pop
now.
bubbles.
Yeah, it terrifies me. And you've got a teenager. Obviously, Aubrey's in her mid-teens, and she's getting ready to start
15.
driving pretty, right?
Yeah, she's a good kid, and but high school can change you, and you just gotta really. High school changed me. Yeah. I mean, I was a really good kid up until high school.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, that's when my parents got divorced, and divorce will, hurt any family. If you don't have a mom and a dad around, which is practically our entire society anymore. In which maybe mom and dad are around, but not together.
Right.
But that really, I think, screwed me up. And
oh yeah, it does necessarily, right?
Well, yeah. But that was the normal.
Yeah.
And it still is, and it probably will be for a long time. Because
back in the 90s, right?
Yeah. It's just that's when I started. Because when you're a woman and you're 15, 16 years old, you're looking for the attention.
Sure.
You want male attention.
Sure. Especially when your household split and now there's other attention going other places other than where your mom and dad were doing it, giving each other attention. Now they're giving it to other people. So there's
and there's no attention to you either.
Yeah. There's more people in the mix. Yeah.
You're just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I want to necessarily blame anybody because that's not really what I'm saying. I'm saying that, a lot of people have gone through this, and as a teenage woman, it is harder, I feel like, maybe than a male, possibly, because maybe not, I don't know, I'm not a male, but, as a woman and you're 15, 16 years old and you don't have a dad around all the time, you do search for that attention.
Sure.
And, that was something that I did. Yeah. And that's something that a lot of teenage girls do. And so I think that, just whenever Madeline gets older, just make sure, just taking your daughter on dates and, making sure that they have literally male attention for them because you have to have that, especially as a teenager. If you're
there has to be an example for what male attention, attention
absolutely.
is appropriate, right?
Exactly.
This is the appropriate level of attention that you should seek from somebody. Outside of that, it's totally different,
Right. Yes. And so you do. You need to have a grandpa or a dad or a stepdad or somebody who is with you on a weekly basis. Yeah. Taking you to dinner, taking you to the movies. Yeah. Just whatever, even coming over and making you lunch, just whatever, just having a conversation with you. And I think a lot of teenagers aren't getting that, but it's been like that for a long time.
Yeah. And even more so now, especially with the distractions that we have as a society, right? Between our cell phones, our tablets, and TV, blah, 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 blah. One of the most tragic things one of those things that sticks with you when you see it, right? I had gone to Katie and I had gone to Stevie's Diner down the street over here, right, which is a little breakfast brunch nook over here on whatever it is, North Tarrant. And we were just talking, having a conversation, and both of us kind of got lost in reading the menu for a minute, and I kind of looked up, and there's a father with a probably 2-year-old toddler, maybe a little younger, in a high chair, and the dad was hunched over the table with his phone, just doing whatever he was doing. His phone had 100% of his attention, right? Mm-hmm. Now that's pretty severe, right? I mean, I'm one of those people where if she is actively trying to engage me, I'll put the phone down. You know what I mean? I have my qualms about phones and access to information anyway, especially as a Christian. I'm one of those, shell me up, put me in an underground bunker made
Yeah.
of.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way,
Yeah.
but they're not going to do it.
Yeah. And you can't, honestly, it's unrealistic to expect that you can shelter your kids from all of it. Mm-hmm. Short of literally living on a giant patch of acreage in the middle of nowhere, even there, you're still going to have the internet access.
Well, yeah, but then even being there, you're shielding them too much.
Right, right,
it's
right.
Like,
unless you're actually
happy medium.
Yeah, unless you're actually encouraging them to develop the lifestyle skills that are required to live out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
And even still in that, you're still sheltering them because they're doing that instead of engaging with kids their age. They're doing that instead of sports or whatever.
But then it's like, are kids even engaging in kids their age?
You kind of wonder,
because they're not. It's like, I mean, my daughter's texting me from her bedroom, but I'm texting her back.
I know, right?
It's
so bad.
But it's easy. I'm like, it's like, hey, Mom, make sure you pick me up at so-and-so time tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's easy. But we all fall into it.
Of course, because it's easy. It becomes a tool that you have to use on a daily basis to operate. And look, I don't necessarily begrudge anybody for use of technology, right? Especially when it comes to their kids, because obviously they're using it in school. You can't, if they're in public schools, you can't shelter them, even in private schools. Because there's even private schools going to tablets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so you can't shelter
give them laptops.
Yeah, you can't hide them from it. So it becomes necessary to instill in them a set of skills to deal with having access to it, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to have it. You probably have to have more mental strength than a teenager has today to actively limit yourself online. Right, because as a teenager, let's go find all the shit. Right, your immediate instinct is let's dive into the extreme.
Right. I mean, who wouldn't?
Right.
I mean, we do it.
Yeah.
The adults do it.
Yeah.
So the teenagers are doing it.
Yeah.
Gosh, if I could Google things when I was 15, 16 years old, I'd be Googling all the things. I mean,
good, bad, or indifferent, right?
Oh, so many things come to mind, but.
So I know Aubrey has her own phone, right?
Yeah.
She has her own cell phone, right?
Since she was probably 11.
Right, and she's at least been relatively. I mean, do you have parental controls on it and all that stuff?
I used to. I mean, I used to get her texts to my phone. So I could see all the things,
right.
And we used to have the same Apple ID,
okay,
and
yeah,
it was
tied together. Yeah.
But then I started wondering what is she getting of mine, and
sure.
I mean I don't know, but so it was just this year I kind of gave her privacy.
Sure.
She's 15. She's a freshman in high school.
Right.
Now I will. I mean, if there's a phone laying around, yeah. I mean, I might. If she's, in the bathroom or something, I might grab it, pick it up, and fling through some messages just to check.
You're mine. I get to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Not to be a dick.
But I mean, it's not I won't be like, hey, give me your phone now. I want to check.
Right.
I don't do that to her, and
that's a very fine line to walk out.
It is. Right? I mean, because you want your children to feel that you trust them.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't.
You can't.
I don't necessarily, but I do, but I don't. But see, like you said, there is a fine line, and she is a good kid. But at the same time, when you're 15 and 16 and 17 years old, you're not thinking straight.
Yeah. You
have mush mind.
Yeah, that's the time in your life when you are most susceptible to all the bullshit that happens in life.
Exactly. I just want to make sure that, but
Yeah.
it brings me a funny off topic a little bit, but. Actually, a proud moment. Just a few months ago, she asked me to get her a couple flags for her room, and one of them was a Trump 2024 flag.
Oh, I'm going to kiss her face when I see her.
I know, and it was just like, you got it, girl.
That's fantastic. I love it.
But it was there was also a TCU flag that she wanted,
right,
because that's kind of her dream. go. And I'm grateful that she has a dream like that. She says she wants to go to law school and she wants to be like on the dance team at TCU. And I didn't have those dreams growing up. You know, when you're a teenager and your parents separate, it's almost like your dreams just go. Pfft.
Yeah, it's survival mode.
You really
like,
do.
How do I deal? And I don't want to say physical survival, but like emotional and psychological survival.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? I got two places that I got to be present with people that are my parents. Now I have to manage that psychologically. Of course, it's gonna. I don't want to say mask, but probably take the place of certain things that were more difficult to execute, maybe than just being present with your parents. You know what I mean? It's easy to be present when your parents are there. It's difficult to go out and do something that's adventurous. But since you have to be, you know, consciously aware of it in both spots,
it's on that anymore. And so I don't know. I mean, I just think being a teenager is hard.
Yeah.
And people, I mean, as a parent, you have to try to put yourself back in that position. But whenever I do that, I'm like, God, I hope you're not like me.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I don't think that my daughter is. I feel like she's definitely a better kid. I almost feel like she's definitely more sheltered than I ever was. But because of the split, maybe, and
you had to go into overprotective mode too. I mean, the situation was what it was. I mean, okay, she's so tiny and so young. I got to go super protective mode. So that means, you know,
exactly.
Means that she's not going to get access to something that she wants to get access to.
Yeah. You over shelter them when that's all you have, kind of thing.
Oh, I totally do it. I'm totally a helicopter dad. I have to like consciously say, okay, Mike, back up. You know, she wants to twirl around on the concrete. She's gonna fall and bust her knee. So, you know what I mean? I gotta like take myself out of the situation. Just because obviously being an adoptive father is a little bit unique from being even a biological father. Not that either one is more or less valid, but there's a certain perspective you have on it because, you know, it's so precious that life is so precious that some people aren't capable of creating it. So that when you get the opportunity to be an influence in a life that someone has created, right? That it puts a very unique spin on things. So with her, I'm probably I'm probably overly aggressive as far as how I talk to her, and I don't want to say like aggressive mean, but like adult, right? We have conversations. I don't like, but no, this is what hey, stop crying, come here, listen. You know what I mean? It starts with you have to kind of build the regiment from when things start going south. From that point, you build the regiment to get her, okay, here's where it is. Let's have a conversation. And because of that, she's relatively well behaved. Now, she's 4, so she's going to act like an asshole occasionally.
Well,
but,
yeah,
you know
but
what I mean?
she's so great. I mean, just for example, I mean, me and Jordan walked into your house today, and, you know, she runs up to Jordan, gives him a hug, runs up to me, gives me a hug, and I feel like that's good parenting.
You know?
Really, though. I mean, that's
a good tribe.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a good tribe.
But she's following what y'all do.
Right.
What am I don't know what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, following by example, exactly. So yeah, that's what she's doing. You know, and so y'all have done a good part on that for sure.
You know, and when you see that example being set come to fruition in her, it's just like, okay, we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
You know, because I know you've dealt with it before. You know, being, am I doing the right thing? Is it okay that I did this
every day?
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of the misconception that people have is like you have to try to be the perfect parent. No, you don't. Right? You just have to recognize when you screw up and fix it. You know, because it's gonna. I have gutturally screamed in the face of a 2-year-old because I got to the point where it's like, what is going? Shabba. And you catch yourself like, oh my God, I just screamed at a 2-year-old, and my God, is my life becoming? You know?
Yeah.
And it's gonna happen though. That's part of parenting.
Well, and then you can apologize to them just as if you would to a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell them, hey, honey, I shouldn't have yelled at you that way. I'm sorry. I love you. Let's move on.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I can't even tell you how many times to my daughter.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, really. I probably did it yesterday, you know, so.
And being okay with that, I think, is where the line gets drawn between good parents and bad parents. Because I think a lot of bad parents think that no matter what it is I do, that's just going to be the way it is. And even if I know I'm wrong, I'm not going to admit that I'm wrong to my child for acting a certain way. So what that ends up doing is by the time that kid gets to an adult, they're acting that same way to their children, thinking that it's okay. Not that it is okay, but because mom and dad said it was okay when they were a kid. You know, and that's the one thing. And my dad was a yeller.
Mine too. Absolutely. I know your dad as well.
Yeah. Yes. Your dad's a welder. My dad's a 6'6" Italian guy at 300. You know what I mean? They were hollowers. You know? Yeah. And I started recognizing that in myself when I even dealing with her. Oh yeah,
I still do it.
Oh dude,
it's hard.
You gotta take
it away from.
Man, you know. And it, over time you learn, you get better. You know.
You do. And God's helped me with that.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. That's why I built
patience.
Right. I built in the regimen of prayers every night. Right. So it's not just for her, but for me. So I can sit down. So the Lord's Prayer is like I consider it the perfect prayer. Right. Our Father, you are the one, and everything is great. Thank you for everything you give us. Forgive us for the things that we do. We ask forgiveness. You're the ultimate thing.
We sin every single day. Every single person does.
Right? So for me, it's a reflection at the end of the day because we do it every night.
Well, it probably gives you relief.
Oh, yeah.
For the believers, they know.
Yeah. And it makes me recognize, okay, today I acted like a jerk to my kids, so now I've got to be conscious of that and make those changes.
Yes.
But because I'm standing accountable in front of God every single night saying, forgive me my trespasses. Sometimes it means flipping somebody off. Sometimes it means I, screamed at my kids. Sometimes it means I screamed at my wife. You know what I mean? But having the regimen of every day holding yourself accountable to being, for being a jerk.
Right.
You know what I mean? It changes the way you perceive things, which is why I built that in there. Built that regimen.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you've done that.
You know what I mean?
And she's so young, and she'll remember that. You're setting a foundation.
Yeah.
And that's important. I mean, their first 5 years, I think, is so important. Yeah. I mean, the first 10, I would say more. But the first 5, really.
For sure.
I mean, you're really setting them up for success or not kind of thing.
Their brain is growing the fastest.
And I feel like God is such a great foundation for a child and for their life. And, I'm sure, I've probably told you this, but I teach preschool at the church every other week.
Which I love that for you, by the way.
Yes.
I so love it for you.
Oh, my gosh. And you know what? It's just, I learned from it, too, because, I'm not really, I don't do a lot of Bible studying and on all that, but I'm learning from their perspective when I'm teaching them as well. I'm reading them a story that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
And, when you're a newer Christian, I guess, because within the last 10 years, which I've always been a Christian, I feel like, but it's just within the last 10 years that I've really started, just embracing that faith and
try to stop being a bad one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's been good for me because you just see the innocence in children, and it makes you just even want to be like them, I guess, in a sense, but
to be open and not, I don't want to say vulnerable, but at least, again, open to the idea of new things in your life when you're that young. Say, oh, new idea, let's take it in, see what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas adult, you're like, what is this crap? What are they trying to do? We look at things with cynical eyes, adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kids are so great. A buddy of mine has always talked about his retirement, right? Since my buddy Chris, I've known him for almost 20 years now. He always talked about his retirement being the old man in the church with the infants, who's in like the infant room,
rocking the babies,
talking at them. You know what I mean? And
great.
That's what he wants to do when he's 80.
Yeah.
And I am like,
and you sing some songs to him, and
like, dude, I'm totally stealing that end goal from you for sure, dude. Yeah, I want to be that old man that's got some life experience on him that wants to just impart on little infant brains. You know what I mean? Good stuff. You know what I mean? And show people that no matter how old you are, and there's still goodness in people. Because it's hard to accept.
You want kids to know that there is, because you don't want them to be afraid of the world.
Yeah.
You don't. It's hard. That's another fine line that we're talking about, because I talk to my kids about, hey, there's strangers out there. Don't wander off in the grocery store because you could never see mom again.
Yep.
I mean, it's like,
yeah.
but but they still do it. I turn around and Jordan's gone. I'm like, where are you? He's like hiding behind the chips.
Yeah.
But
They can't snatch his.
I'm like, dude, where are you?
I know it's a game, but it's not a game.
Yeah, he's over here talking to, John down the aisle. I'm like, what are you doing? You have no idea who that is. But at the same time, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like social media and all the things that we have access to have created our society to be afraid of so much.
Yeah.
And, but God, there's a lot of good people out in the world. More than bad.
Yeah.
Definitely more than bad. And, I think that it's just, we just really need to just smile more at people.
Yeah.
Shake their hand. Hey, how are you? You know what? I was at Wingstop yesterday. Mm-hmm. This is just a perfect example. My ex-mother-in-law, well, was never really married, but, anyways, Lori.
Grandma.
Yeah. Curtis's mom.
Yeah.
Her and I, it was like mid-recital because we had the dance recital yesterday. So she was like, hey, come hop in my car. We'll go grab some food. I'm like, okay, you got it. So I jumped in her car. We went down the road to Wingstop and I was over there getting my teas, God, fast food nowadays, which I don't know if you consider Wingstop fast food, but I thought it was fast food. Apparently not. I mean, but you got a bunch of 20-year-olds over there like on their cell phones, and it's like, who's cooking my stuff? I mean, come on. I was probably about 20 minutes. I'm thinking, I've worked at a wing place. Takes like 9 minutes. Drop the wings. I mean, what's going on? But I was patient. And there was a kid as I was getting my tea, probably 10 years old, walked up to me, getting his napkins right next to me. Hi, ma'am. How was your day?
Right.
And I'm telling you, I mean, I'm obviously talking about this right now because that was just like, I was like mind blown because a 10-year-old came up to me and asked me how my day was. I couldn't believe it. And, and I look over and there's a mom and she's got 3 other kids with her and he's one of them. And I was just like, you go, Mom. Yeah. Because that to me is special. Yeah. Nowadays, I couldn't even imagine my 15-year-old doing that.
Kid's not buried in a cell phone or whatever.
Yeah. He's just over there just wiping his wing fingers and looking at me and saying, hi, ma'am, how was your day?
Being a kid, right?
I couldn't even believe it. I was just like, it's going good. Yeah. Thank you. How was your day?
Yeah, right. You actually want to like genuinely invest.
Yeah, in his day. And I was like, "Is your belly full?" He just had some wings, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm feeling good." And it was just, cute kid. And I just wish more kids and more people, just in general, were willing to just talk to people, embrace people, engage, and it's just sad that our world has become what it's become because we don't have the relationships that we did 20 years ago. And even with your own family.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's one of those things where like my mother, my dad and mom and my relationship has been it's been rocky, sure, but I'm an only child, so it's always been unconditional, right? So even through the bad times, it was never like an end all be all thing. Fast forward to, 42, 43 years old, wife gets sick, I've got a kid, and, we've got all this crazy stuff, and a little situation happens that involved my parents that was not thought through,
right.
That was not thought through fully. Yeah. Yeah. And it created a little scuffle, right? And that scuffle, from my parents' perspective, turned into, we're done, right? And I'm like, okay. And of course, I didn't know that. Yeah. No. And it was just a little dust up because my parents are who they are. You know what I mean? It is what it is. But my approach was to it. Okay, well, why don't you calm down and we'll talk about it later. And I got another thing. Done. Like, oh my god. I was like, okay, all right, fine. I'm not gonna argue with you about it. If that's the way you feel, fine. I've got a 4-year-old and a wife to take care of. We got stuff going on in the house. It's crazy and all this sick. There's some. Infirmities and whatever, blah, 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 blah. Obviously got to focus on this. So we'll get back to this later. And of course, once you fast forward to the time, it's like, okay, we're fine.
Okay, good. Okay. I was like, what's going on?
But once reality hit, once life on my side of my parents, away from my parents, I should say, became real, where I've got a sick wife and I've got a kid and I got bills I got to pay and I've got a job, all this other stuff. that's when the stress kind of pops, and you really kind of figure out what it is that people are willing to endure with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of a loose example, but I find that a lot of times there's the people who are in your life for the long term are the ones who react to those situations calmly, right? And Katie's perfect example, right? Katie's one of those people.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I'm
always.
gonna talk a little shit at you.
You have an amazing wife, by the way.
She is. I'm gonna talk a little shit at you because this is a funny story. And Katie and I talk about this all the time. You called her. You've gone out to stockyards and met some friends or whatever, and ended up like somewhere out in Alito or whatever. And she had to come get you the next day. And Katie and I had just kind of met. We were just a couple months into it, and she's like, "I gotta go see my girl. I gotta go get her." You know, it's like, "Are you? This is God. I cannot. There's no. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I can't believe she did this." And yada yada yada. And Katie was like,
"No questions asked.
Chill out. I'll go handle it. I'll bring it. Everything's fine."
Yeah.
You know, and because you had the relationship that you had with her, she was okay. I got you, boo. I got you.
Right.
And everything was fine.
It was a little awkward on the car ride home.
Sure.
But,
Sure. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And but it's one of those things because you are who you say you are, because you believe the things that you say you believe, and you've endured the journey that you've endured. I can sit here and have this conversation with you and tell you the story now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As somebody who loves you like a brother, who understands that my love for you is unceasing because we are who we are in Christ.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
absolutely.
I love the fact that we have that relationship.
Well, and we can, exactly. And that's what Christians, I think, a lot of us, people don't understand that about some Christians. You know, a lot of people look down on us, or look that we feel like we're high and mighty.
Yep.
Because I feel like it's actually the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely don't ever feel high and mighty whatsoever, ever.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, I am a child of God. I do know that. I feel that way. However, that definitely doesn't make me high and mighty, because, you know, God seeks the weak.
Yeah.
And that was me. I am the weak. I still am the weak. We're all the weak. He seeks
your confidence is in his power, not your understanding.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it has nothing to do with my own. I mean, it has everything to do with him. And, but yeah, and then it's okay to talk about the things that I've done, the bad things that I've done, because I'm a new person now, and I know you are too, Mike. And, you know, it's
100%.
okay to just, you know, kind of let some of this stuff out. It's okay. And it feels good.
Yeah, for sure. When
To
you know how
say-
to handle it, and you know why it's why it's here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes it way easier to deal with. You know what I mean? And not that I think that I have to deal with you in any way, because you are obviously an amazing person who
You might have had to deal with me back in the day,
Well,
but, you know.
and likewise, you had to deal with me, because I was a little rough around the edges too. You know? I had my own demons in the closet.
Yeah.
Even though I was airing yours out, like, you know, like
Yeah,
I
you were
didn't
like,
have it,
oh,
right?
what about you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, because I've dealt with it my entire life, right? So being an only child and talented as I am in the things that I do, I've had a very easy life as far as accomplishing things, right? Not to say that life is necessarily
Well, because
easy,
you had your parents probably put it all in
well, yeah,
to you, and
they
you know,
spent a butt ton of money
right.
turning me into a noisemaker.
Well, if you're a parent,
And that's just what they did.
but I mean, yeah, they helped you. Look at what you're doing now.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing your dreams. You're
But
going.
for them, I would have none of this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
And there's a very unique spot when I hit 33. And you know, again, nerd brain does what it does, and I extrapolate all this information at unique times. My 33rd birthday, I had recently moved back in with my parents after coming back from Austin and failing, and with the band and the company. And
This was before you met Katie?
Yeah, just before I met
Okay.
Katie. And I remember, it was my 32nd birthday. It was my 33rd birthday. Yeah, 33rd birthday.
Okay.
I remember sitting on the patio thinking about, okay, what in the F are you again, one of the spots where you have nothing. You're destitute. You have only the car that your parents agree to pay for so you can get around town, right? Which is a crap spot to be in, but it's necessary.
Hey, but some people don't have that.
You know? And I remember sitting on my parents' patio, stoned to the bejesus bells. Like one of those like out-of-body ethereal moments. I was 33. And I started thinking about this life journey that I was on. And one of those things hit me. Christ was 33 when he died. So oh my God. Oh my God. So September 8th is when the Virgin Mary was born according to the Catholic canon law. Wow. Jesus Christ died when he was 33, so that's my birthday. And the time, the age I was when I started having this.
So you were thinking, oh my God, this is it.
When those epiphanies hit, it was like, well, why am I here? Mm-hmm. And God said, because the two people that are sleeping in the room in the same house that you had to move into because you're a bum chose you in 1979. That's why you're here. It's like, bro, Cephas. Really? It all connects that intertwined. And this is 10 years into my Christian journey. You know what I mean? I'm still a moron, idiot, nobody at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean? Okay, I get it. So just relax, take a breath, do what I tell you to do, and everything will be fine. And it was kind of one of those low points in your life where, like, okay, there's a story in the Bible about somebody testing I can't remember who it was. It was one of the main characters in the Bible, testing the existence of God with wool being placed outside the door of his house. If the wool is wet in the morning, I exist. If the wool is wet in the morning, I exist, right? And the overall story was, yeah, the wool is wet in the morning. Of course I exist, right? And that was my wool is wet in the morning, right? I woke up that morning, I was like, okay, all right, I'll shut up and listen. Graduated tech school, started a brand new job at a luxury dealership as a mechanic in a brand new career. You know what I mean? Met Katie, and boom, off to the races we went. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's one of like if you just listen, and I think that's the thing that most people miss today. Nobody just stops and listens.
Well, and I feel like sometimes the voice is there, but they don't know to listen to it. Sure,
they don't know where it's coming from.
Right, they don't know where it's coming from, and it's there. Though, I mean, it's there, and it's probably there for everybody. Yeah. I mean, because Jesus died on the cross for everybody who wants to put their faith and trust in him. Yeah.
Whether you do or not.
Right.
He still died for your soul so that it could be saved should you make the decision.
Exactly. You know exactly. I mean? He did it for everybody. Yeah. But it's your choice. Yeah. And so, but yeah, that, you talking about, your moment and everything. Whenever I met Joe, I was still kind of, just still doing
floaty
things that I probably shouldn't be doing in life. And, but I just remember our first date. We actually talked about God on our first date.
No kidding.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
We did.
I would never have made that fart joke if you told me that. I would never have almost taken a remote to the face. Sorry. I had to get
no, I know. Screw you, Mike.
I love you, Mel.
Oh, goodness. I wanted to kill you that day.
Yeah, I know.
But no, we talked about God on our first date. It was at BJ's Brew House.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we sat at the bar, and I told him I want a relationship with a man who wants God as a part of their life.
So you were setting the standard.
Well, yeah, but he was actually going, surprisingly, Joe was like in the same position in his life at the same time. I'm telling you, God brought us together. Yeah. 100%. I mean, 100%.
No doubt.
And he had just been recently going to church with a buddy of his. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, yes, me too. Yeah. And so, I mean, it was meant to be. Yeah. And, I love my husband, and, we've had some good moments and bad moments like every marriage, but I mean, it's just, lately it's been kind of some good sailing, and, but I definitely know that it's because of God. Yeah. I do. I know 100%. Me and Jordan, in Aubrey most days, Joe works Sundays, so he doesn't really make it to church with us, but I bring it home. Right.
He's at least willing to engage when he comes home.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I bring it home, and I try to be the wife that God wants me to be. Sure. It's a struggle. Yeah. I mean, but Christians struggle.
It is what it is.
And I hope that the world knows that. Yeah. Most Christians are people that were at their worst at some point in their life. You know, I mean, there are Christian families that, you know, they've had smooth sailing their whole life. There are Christian families like that, but I'm telling you, most of the people who have put their complete faith and trust in God are people that have been at their lowest in life, have, you know, whether it be a drug overdose or, you know, alcoholism or whatever it may be. I mean, you know, prostitution or whatever.
Yeah.
There have been lows in those people's lives, and I wish that the world would understand that Christians are not high and mighty.
Yeah.
We were at the base of this world, and God has brought us up.
Yeah.
And that is why we praise our God so much.
Yeah.
That is why we want people to know Jesus, because we have been at the lowest of the low.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've all been there, and it's all different. All of our lows are different. You know, I mean, your low's different than mine.
Yeah.
You know, our neighbor's low is different than ours, and it's all different. But, you know, I just wish the world would quit looking at Christians like we feel like we're high and mighty, because we're not.
And I'll say this. We'll kind of wrap up here in just a minute. And I'll say this as it relates to the Christian perception, based, you know, what the world's perception of Christians is, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at the TV, the world's perception of Christians are racist, homophobic, you know, violently rhetorical, angry people who are just, you know, tied to a Bible and rigid in what they are, and they're willing to castigate you and judge you, you know, on the street for whatever. Mm-hmm. And all of my life, and I was raised Orthodox Roman Catholic. You know, my father was Italian Catholic, like old world Italians. He's a first generation American.
Your dad. It's kind of scary,
right? Grew up with that old Catholic guilt, right? My mother was a non-practicing Jew. You know, she's a Jew by genetics, not a Jew by, you know, faith. But I grew up around the, you know, obviously being that she was Jewish by genetics, she had Jews by faith in her family. So I watched them as I grew up, and of course being here in the South, it was Southern Baptists and the non-denominationals and all these all these offshoots of the same thing essentially, which is, you know, Christ died for our sins, and that's it. You know, seek God first. Christ died. You go to heaven. Love your neighbor. Yeah. You know, and having experienced all of them, which are, and they're totally separate, right? So obviously Jews are totally different from Catholics. Catholics are totally different from Southern Baptists. Southern Baptists are totally different from Presbyterians, who are totally different from Church of Christ, who are totally different from non-denominational, you know, whatever. But in all of those, and all of the people that I've met, and all of those different, you know, factions of religion, never once have I met somebody who is militantly angry at people who didn't live the way that they lived. Never once. Not once. Right? And it's like the racism thing in the South, right? I've been here my entire life. I was a mixed race kid in the 70s. My odds of making it out of a hospital as not an abortion were extremely slim. You know what I mean? This whole you know, systemic racism and Christians are bad. That's all bullshit. Based on my personal life experience living in Northeast Texas for the vast majority of my life, and experiencing Christianity from all different sides, and other religions, obviously Islam and Judaism as a practice. I've got friends. I've experienced people. I've interrelated with those people. All of it. Through all of it, never have I once met some extreme right wing whatever that's, you know, a MAGA wearing blah blah blah. Me neither. It doesn't exist. Right. And the ones that did exist were the little faction that did the gays are bad and God judges them. That was that one little small church in the South that everybody pointed to as like, look, Christians are bad.
Exactly.
Like, that's an inbred church of like 15 people.
Right.
Versus, you know, 100 million Christians in this country alone.
Yes.
Really? This is the perception that you have because you turn off the TV.
Right.
Turn off the TV.
Right. I feel like there's good in everybody.
Yeah.
There is. There's good in everybody. Yeah. Sometimes you have to look for it, and sometimes you have to give yourself.
In all cases, I think.
Yeah. Well, even my 5-year-old, I was trying to explain to him. I know you're trying to wrap up.
No, you're fine.
You know, my 5-year-old, I was you know, talking to him like, hey, I was telling him about the love your neighbor thing, right? Because this whole Mama Bear apologetics that we did recently at church, it was like, oh, you got to talk to your kids, and, you know, got to, like, you know, tell them things and have the conversations. And so, you know, I was like having a conversation with him about, you know, love your neighbor, and, you know, and I tell him, I'm not talking about your neighbor that like lives next door. Right. This means all the people,
humanity
around you, you know, that's your neighbor. That's everybody around you. And I said, a lot of times, Jordan, the one that's being mean to you is the one that actually needs your love the most.
Needs it the most.
And then, but then, he goes into the, well, what if this guy wants to, kidnap me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I didn't know we were going to go there. And,
even those extremes, yes, he's probably the one who needs love the most.
I think he even said worse things like
not
like stab
optimal,
me or something. My 5-year-old, he's a little morbid sometimes, but but then it kind of like, I was like, But I mean, honestly, truly though, those are the people that have gone so far off from God, they've become evil. And they are the ones that are doing the murdering and the stealing and the killing and the crazy things.
Or because they've never even been introduced to what God actually
absolutely,
is.
They may not even know who God is.
You know what I mean? How many single parent households do we have in these communities? And not just black communities. I'm saying white communities as well.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? How many single parent households do we have that aren't built on some kind of faith infrastructure that reinforces, hey,
there's no telling.
Do good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Man's job is to provide. Woman's job is to use that provision effectively in the house, right? I mean, whether she's going out and earning or not is totally irrelevant to the fact that her job is at home to use the resources accordingly. The man's job is to go out, provide those resources, and treat the person who is utilizing his resources that he brings home in an effective way, to treat her like she's actually doing a good job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a very cohesive relationship that has to be built.
Well, it's hard because a lot of these kids, they grow up, say, in a very poor neighborhood. And so all they know is, I have to hustle. Mm-hmm. I have to be violent.
Yep.
I have to do this. I have to do that. And then it's almost like there's no way of getting out. Yeah. For them, and it's hard because those are the people that we do need to reach out to, and and it's all races. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what color you are.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's all races, and it's people that they get stuck in that lifestyle, but but then again, it's hard because there was a church I was a part of for a little bit, like kind of outside the church, like a group. It was like Six Stones or something, and they wanted me to go, knocking door to door at this apartment complex. And, my first experience doing that, a guy opens the door and has a gun in his hand. Yeah. So I'm like, never again. I'm like,
I don't want to be in that situation.
I don't think I want to go knock on the ghetto apartments anymore. I'm good. Yeah. But at the same time, we do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a need for it for sure.
I mean, but some of these apartments are now doing these like community get-togethers at like the little event centers or whatever that they have at the apartment complexes. So, you have a choice. You have a choice. Yeah. You could be in the ghettoest of ghetto, but guess what? You have a choice to participate in that, and you have a choice to maybe possibly move out of that. There's ways around it. Yeah. And we all have a choice.
It becomes ever more important that there are people in those communities who are giving an example of how to react in a different way. Because when the only thing that you see in those situations is violence, anger, you know what I mean, crime, all that stuff, that's how you're going to react, because that's the only thing that you've known.
Exactly.
If you have somebody, if fathers are in the household and they are good Christian fathers, they are going to teach these kids, no, you don't react to the situation around you by being part of the situation around you if their situation around you is not good. You have to strive, you have to work, you have to be better than that, and you have to pursue different reactions. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Like, the only thing that we can control is our reaction to what's going on around us. That's it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, everything is in his hands, right? So if we were teaching these kids, maybe if there were people in these in these communities who were teaching these kids to react differently than violence, than selling drugs, than anger, than all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? That would be honestly what I believe would be the most effective starting point at affecting change, right?
Yeah.
But until we get fathers in these households, and again, not just black folks, not just or whatever's, there's single moms all over the planet. There are single moms of all races in this country, and that core tenet of having two parents in a household is the single greatest factor to determining whether or not your life is going to be okay. And there are people who work through it, even in spite of it, like you did. Your mom and dad divorced, right? And obviously, Aubrey's she's working through it extremely well, all things considered. She's an amazing kid. You know what I mean? I know a whole bunch of my friends, like you were talking about, girls, teenage girls having a hard time, and I don't necessarily think it's a more difficult time than a boy. It's just handling it different. Because what boys do in those situations, they go ham. They go off the deep end. Everything is accessible, so I'm going to do it all because ain't nobody watching me, right? Whereas the girls are, well, that seems fun, right? I mean, because they're looking for a male figure. And if their male figure is a product of a divorced household who wants to go full blast in whatever bad direction,
exactly,
guess where they're going?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, again,
hopefully they find one that's not that way. But
right.
A lot of times they find each other.
Well, I mean, our generation, how many kids were divorced? I mean, how many? I can't tell you how many friends that I had in the 90s that had divorced parents by the time we were in junior high, much less by the time we got to high school or college. You know what I mean? That's a whole nother story. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it really, honestly, obviously, played out in society the way it has, and in our little circle, I've watched some of the guys who had extraordinary families who were married top to bottom, start to finish. Some of their parents have gone, have died and moved on. And these guys have had more than one marriage, myself included. Mm-hmm. My parents have been married since day one. Never, they fought, and every once in a while you get divorced, but it never happened.
Right.
Right. I've already got an ex-wife. You know what I mean? By the time I had met Katie, I was divorced for. Oh my God! By the time I met Katie, I had been divorced for almost 15 years. You know what I mean? I was 19 when I got married, like an idiot, like a moron.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, in the one thing I learned in my recent study was the statistics of a Christian home, that if the children will follow suit, I think I'm going to try to get these percentages right, but if the mother is a follower. Mm-hmm. Christian, if she's the leader of the home, if the mother is
the Christian leader,
yes, then the children have a 50% chance.
Yeah.
If the father is the leader, I think the percentage goes up into the 90s.
Skyrockets.
So, I mean, you hear all these things, women, it's like all this, women power and this women movement and
deflecting fault, deflecting accountability, because men do it too.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, well, women have brought down the manlyhood of men. Well, honestly, I mean, if you think about it, the manlyhood of men has always been there. Yeah. I mean, there may be movements going on here and there and everything, but
we've allowed the TV we've allowed the TV to make us think that masculinity is a bad thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's allowed. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but then again, I mean, it just makes me think that men don't. That's not a good excuse for y'all.
Well, yeah,
I mean, it's not a good excuse. Women haven't done this to you.
No.
No. Society hasn't necessarily done this to you.
Our complacency with our thumb like this has done it to us.
Well,
as men, this is what's done it to us.
And so, I just. I hate that I'm even like getting into this, but it's just come to my mind. I'm sorry, but I'm just talking about those statistics. Mm-hmm. Okay, so hey, if you're a man of the household, step it up. Yeah. Like be a man, be a Christian. If that's on your mind, like take your family to church, even if it's once a month. Like get engaged. Say a prayer at dinner. Yeah. Because it makes a huge difference to your children. Yeah. It makes a huge difference to your children. I mean, that's from 50% to 90%. Yeah. And a lot of times it is the moms. It is the mothers of the home because they're trying and they're doing. But that shows you that a family is supposed to be a man and woman. Yeah. And that's what makes a whole family. And that's what it's supposed to be. And that's what it is.
Yep. It is what it is, Neil.
I mean, that's what God, to me, says it is. And so, in my sense, it is what it is.
Yeah. Because he said so, not because I did the math.
Right. Yeah. So, having a mom and having a dad is a huge, huge difference in a family.
It's designed that way. It's 100% designed that way. You know what I mean? if we are designed with two unique sets of chromosomes to offset one another physically so that we can procreate, it just makes sense that all the other binary stuff, is applicable.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, if you want to act however you want to act, I don't care. I don't care. The reason I don't care is because I don't watch TV. I don't care.
Right, me neither.
You know what I mean?
I watch Netflix and all the shows, but no news
stuff,
and that I'm done.
I turn it off. I'm done. I don't have any room for it in my life because I'm overwriting old hard drive space.
If I see it on my screen, I'm like, turn that off.
Yeah. I'll Katie watch her little shows or whatever when she's on.
But now
call
it's on commercials. Have you noticed that? Get your vaccines.
Hey,
Make sure you're up to date on your vaccines. I'm sorry, but that was just
everything's dudes kissing. Everything's get your vaccine.
Yeah.
Everything's racism is bad. We have to do they're pointing out the most obvious things and treating us as a society like we don't know it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Everybody knows that racism is bad. Everybody knows that being sick sucks. Everybody knows that being gay is okay. Nobody cares.
Right.
We've all got our own. We normal people.
Well, and sin is a sin is a sin to me.
Yeah. Don't hate the sinner, hate the sin. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
I've got a lot of friends.
That's God. That's what God does.
I got a lot of friends in my life who live alternative lifestyles, and I love them dearly because that's what I'm called to do. I'm not called to judge them and wag my finger at them and tell them you're doing wrong stuff. Blah, 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 blah. My job is to love them like
Absolutely.
I would love anybody else.
Absolutely.
If they come to me and they ask, I'm going to give them an honest opinion. I'm not going to berate them and call them all kinds of names.
Right.
I'm just going to give them my biblical perspective. If they don't come to me for it, I'm not going to give it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just have to be a tool for him when he needs me to be a tool. And that's how I live, And it may be cynical of me or whatever, but I think you kind of feel the same way. You feel called to spread the word, not necessarily to go knock on doors, but to be an open vessel for people to confide in.
Well, and I feel like part of you and I, Mike, we're similar in this way that part of following Jesus is just showing love to people. Yeah. I'm not going to go run around talking behind people's backs and, calling people names and that's just not who I am anymore. Right. Maybe it was 20 years ago, but that's not who I am anymore. And I just want to show love. Yeah. And that's, I feel like it's just part of our job.
Yep. It is part of it. It's part of what we have to do, right?
Yeah.
So like I said,
that's my purpose.
Yeah. The why,
if somebody wants to know,
what, and the how. Right?
Yeah.
I do things because I want people to be better. You know what I mean?
Right. Of course. What
I'm doing is just trying to be available as a tool for whatever he needs me to do, and how I do it is allow him to work through me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I've had several conversations with people where I didn't know what the hell I was saying because God said, just close your eyes, open your mouth, I'll put the words in there. It's happened. It's happened. And I was like 20 minutes later, like, what happened? What did I say? What happened? Right. Not like an out of body experience, but you're not consciously coming up the words because the words aren't yours or his. Mm-hmm. You're just there conveying them to somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think it's if more of us were receptive to being that antenna, I think we would have a
right. I know there's been times where I felt exactly like that, except for the words didn't come out. Yeah. I just kept them in.
Oh, yeah. Self-censoring for sure, yeah.
Oh, I wish I would have said those things, and I didn't say the things. And, but at the same time, I also feel like it's because I was trying to be loving.
Sure.
But that's not what I was supposed to do.
Sure. Right. Yeah, for sure. Mel, thank you so much, honey, for coming and sitting down with me.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. This is honestly one of the better podcasts. How long are we at? We're at 2 hours and 24 minutes.
Oh,
like it wasn't
wow.
Shit. Like wasn't nothing.
Well, I just felt like this is our normal shit talking whatever.
Yeah. This is a
normal sit on the porch and have a drink conversation anyway with you.
And I love the fact that you were willing to come in here and have a conversation with me. So, again, guys, if you can be here, get here. As always, be helpful, be a leader. Give love to Mel. Comments, likes and all that stuff. Give love because she's an amazing woman who deserves the praise for sure, which is why I kind of wanted to do this episode with her anyway. So, after that, be sure to check out the website for southernoakman.com for all the future dates and all this kind of stuff, and releases for the podcast will be hopefully on the Michael Henry's Ammo Box Facebook page. So outside of that, Like I said, be helpful, be a leader, and as always, if you can be here, get here. Right on.